With the release of Lost Caverns of Ixalan, we have 4 new Commander Precons coming, each focused on a specific creature type. And today we're looking at Ahoy Mateys, the Pirate Typal Grixis deck. Will this one batten down the hatches, or have our timbers shivering? Let's take a look at the deck's box legend, Admiral Brass Unsinkable. The Pirate Captain is back and better than ever. She's now a 5-mana 3/3 human pirate that reads, when Admiral Brass Unsinkable enters the battlefield, mill 4 cards. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may return target pirate creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. It has base power and toughness 4/4. It gains haste until end of turn. As a note, if a creature with a finality counter on it dies, exile it instead. The new Admiral Brass brings a few interesting things to the table, like self-mill on enters the battlefield and the ability to reanimate your pirates repeatedly from the graveyard. The ability making them a 4/4 means we can't cheat out big beefy boys, but it does mean that our little 1/1s or 2/2 pirates come back as much better threats. The finality counters are an interesting new mechanical addition to the game, and Caverns of Ixalan is the first time we're actually seeing them. A creature with a finality counter is exiled instead of putting it into the graveyard, which unfortunately prevents us from looping incredible creatures over and over. Without this, pulling a Port Razor back again and again and again would have been a 2-card infinite combat combo. But it does mean that we can remove those counters, somehow, like with a Power Conduit, to at least make sure not all of our pirates are gone forever. But as with all of these heavily typal precons, this puts us in a very distinct hole right out of the gate. Fortunately, the Admiral isn't our only new legend. We also have Don Andres the Renegade, a 4-mana 4/3 vampire pirate. The Dawn reads, each creature you control but don't own gets +2/+2, has menace and death touch, and is a pirate in addition to its other types. Additionally, whenever you cast a non-creature spell you don't own, create 2 tapped treasure tokens. Now this is what a lot of people have been asking for, and believe me, I get a lot of people asking for it. A theft-themed commander, one that rewards you for swiping opponents' creatures by making them bigger and evasive, and paying you for casting your opponent's spells. It's pretty clearly a synergy piece rather than an enabler, which certainly has its issues, and it means that your most consistent piece of your deck, your commander, cares more that you're already doing the thing, rather than helping you to do the thing, and that certainly presents a challenge. But there's lots we can do with helping the thing if we warp the deck around the Dawn here. Before we see how we can turn this deck into a smash and grab job, let's take a look at a few of the brand new cards it gives us. Like Francisco Foul Marauder, a 2-mana 0/1 bird pirate with flying and, believe it or not, partner. That's right, a brand new partner. This parrot buddy also reads, whenever 1 or more pirates you control deal damage to a player, Francisco explores. Exploring lets you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it into your hand, and if it's not a land, you can keep it on top of your library or put it in your graveyard, and put a +1/+1 counter on the exploring creature. Yes, this foul friend is more pirate typal synergies, but can pair very well with Breach's Brazen Plunderer or Malcolm Keen-Eye Navigator to lead a 2-color list and help swab the deck. It's important to note that Francisco is worded exactly like Professional Facebreaker or Grim Hireling, in that dealing damage to a single player with multiple pirates only gets you 1 Explore trigger, but dealing damage to multiple players with a single pirate gets you multiple triggers. Any new partner is interesting, and I can see Francisco here having fun inside or at the lead of a few lists. Next up, we have the Grim Captain's Locker. This 4-mana legendary artifact reads, tap, surveil 1, letting us look at the top card of our library and choosing to put it into our graveyard or keep it on top. It also lets us tap it to give each creature in our graveyard escape for 4 mana and exiling 4 cards from our yard. Another really neat effect, merging 2 mechanics from different sets to give us a nice, thematic take on Davy Jones's Locker. In a self-mill deck led by Sidisi Brood Tyrant, or Sir Conrad the Grim, the Locker here does some real work, getting us back our biggest, baddest threats every turn, provided we can keep filling the graveyard. With all of the effects that mill repeatedly, like Mesmeric Orb or Perpetual Timepiece, we could easily have the fodder to bring back whatever we want for what is potentially a fraction of their costs. I really like reanimation tricks, and this effect is up there with one of the best repeatable sources of reanimation of all time. We also have the new Stormfleet Navigator in the deck, a 3-mana 2/2 flyer. This Siren Pirate has Parlay. To parlay, when Stormfleet Negotiator attacks, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you make a map token, and everyone draws a card. Map tokens are these little buddies. Artifact tokens that let you pay 1, tap, and sacrifice them to have target creature you control explore. They can only be activated as a sorcery, but it can be a good source of getting +1/+1 counters on your creatures, or just making sure you've always got a land drop available. Being that the Negotiator has flying means parlaying on attack isn't as bad as some of the other parlay effects. No one likes drawing their opponent's cards, but combining the open knowledge of what people have in their hands with the benefit of being able to put counters on your evasive creatures means the Negotiator can be a strong political tool. You'll find many opponents willing to take a few points of damage in order to draw an extra card, especially someone who may be behind on land drops or just had their board state blown out. Adding to that, the synergies you can get for putting multiple artifact tokens into play, like damage from a Reckless Fireweaver, or turning them into something bigger and better with a Brutaclad, and this one goes in some real potential decks. Lastly, we have the Indomitable, a 4-mana legendary artifact vehicle and Admiral Brass's new ship. This 6/6 vehicle has Trample and Crew 3, but also reads, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And you may cast the Indomitable from your graveyard as long as you control 3 or more tapped pirates and or vehicles. Baseline, full stop, this is another copy of Bident of Thassa or Coastal Piracy you can include in your decks. There are a lot of decks where those cards see play already and do work in refilling your hand for any deck with blue that likes to attack. If this weren't a vehicle, it would still see play. But a step behind that is how resilient it is, being able to be recast from your graveyard too. Sure, in a lot of decks you won't have 3 pirates or vehicles, but the fact that it could be done is what makes it great. This one is already a known good card with several other good things stapled onto it. There's not much more to say except now you can run this and Reconnaissance Mission and have 4 of the same effects in your deck. I love redundancy and this one adds to it. Once crewed, it can trigger itself, which, come on, is just fantastic. I'll be looking to get a copy for sure. Now, let's take a look at the list and find out where we can make the cuts. Currently, the deck has quite a few ways to steal creatures, but not a lot of ways to cast opponent's spells. So we'll be cutting some of the pirates and spells from the list that don't do that, so we can put Don Andres behind the wheel and plunder our opponent's best cards. First, we'll cut some pirates that are just pirates but don't actually pirate, like Fathom Fleet Captain, Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro, and the new Skeleton Crew. Not that these aren't good cards in other decks, but we don't necessarily want to be focusing on the reanimation elements of the deck, and we won't need a volume of pirates to help us do the thing. Dire Fleet Ravager, Merchant Raiders, and the new Gem Cutter Buccaneers don't make the final list either. While they have their uses, they're more useful in a deck that's about pirates. And while we'll be doing some looting and pillaging, we have pirates in the deck, but the deck isn't about pirates any longer. Timestream Navigator can also go. While it's a decent card and an extra turn essentially once per game, it's okay, but it's not exploitable in this deck. A good reprint, don't get me wrong, but more at home in a River Song deck than anything else, but not a part of our game plan here. Distant Melody, Captain Lannery Storm, and Icon of Ancestry can all get cut as well. We'll be looking to draw cards a few different ways, and expensive or costly inclusions in the deck just for the typal synergies don't need to stay in our final list. What we want to add in are more ways to snag our opponent's creatures and spells since we're rewarded for doing that regularly. Captivating Crew and Zara Renegade Recruiter are already in the deck, and they're exactly what we want. Repeatable ways to use our opponent's best stuff against them. Of course, all amped up by our commander to attack with evasion. Here's where we can add in some mass theft cards like Mob Rule. Grabbing creatures big or small with our commander out can lead to alpha striking and ending the game quickly. Sower of Temptation and Mind Flayer both let us snag a creature for as long as we control Sower of Temptation and Mind Flayer, rather than just until end of turn like most of Red's control effects. This also means we can sacrifice our own creatures to later reanimate them and get new targets if something bigger and juicier presents itself. Along those same lines, we'll need a few ways to sacrifice creatures when they're no longer useful to us. The existing deck has the new Broadside Bombardiers, which is exactly the effect that we're looking for, but Goblin Bombardment is now less than $1 thanks to Wilds of Eldraine, and makes for a perfect fit for this deck. Now we can send opponents' creatures right back at them. But snagging creatures isn't the only thing we want to do. No, we want to be casting our opponent's spells as well. The only real source of it in the main deck is King Narfi's Betrayal, which is a good start, but I'm thinking we can add a few more options. Thief of Sanity, for instance. This lets us get a potential new card to cast when it deals combat damage to a player, and even better, we can do that as long as the card remains exiled, even if we eventually lose the thief. Grima, Saruman's Footman, is a new addition from the Lord of the Rings set, but being unblockable and free casting a spell on combat damage from our opponent's decks is huge. No matter how big Grima gets, he'll still be unblockable, so guaranteed damage and a guaranteed free spell is exactly what we're looking for. Then there's Cunning Rhetoric. It's one of my favorite cards for this strategy, letting us exile potentially multiple cards from any opponent foolish enough to attack us. This can give you several of their spells to cast or creatures to play over the course of the game, or it just prevents them from attacking you altogether. That is win-win in what we're hoping to pull off with this deck. Now, a quick look at the mana base. Once again, a 3-color mana base from a Commander Precon is going to leave a lot to be desired. Cutting tap lands like Port of Carfell and all 3 Thriving lands is a must, and replacing them with the Pain lands is the first change I'd make. Adding in the missing check lands to accompany Sulphur Falls would all be positive additions to the deck. Then, removing some of the less than ideal utility lands that add no colors like Gaia Reach Sanitarium and Nephalia Drownyard can allow them to become just more basics, and with that, we have something resembling a useful mana base. Now for the upgrade. If I were to add a few more dollars to the deck, what would I add? And there are some doozy additions we can make to this list. Turns out a lot of popular additions to this archetype are a bit pricey. Like Insurrection. With Don Andres out, if this wasn't already a potential blowout game winner, it absolutely would be. Gaining control of all creatures until end of turn is worth the price tag here. And cards like Mind's Dilation are another curve topper, getting us free spells and money thanks to Don Andres every turn is just so good. Getting to its needed 7 mana is a pain, but once you do, you spin so far out of control on value and action economy that your opponents will not be able to keep up. I also really like Mnemonic Betrayal here too, giving us a kind of Yawgmoth's Will for everything in our opponent's graveyards. If we can cast this with our commander out, and cast all of the little spells from our opponent's graveyards, we could be untapping with a mountain of treasures and mana at our disposal. Then, there are cards like Bribery and Treachery too. These unique theft effects aren't budget friendly, but definitely let us nab some of the biggest, scariest stuff from our opponents and let us wreak havoc on the table with them for far less than they would actually cost. With Don Andres giving the stolen creatures a nice boost and evasion, there's no doubt it's going to be effective. Let me know what you think of this upgrade in the comments below, and if you've got any suggestions for additions, be sure to share them with everybody. And be sure to check out my sponsor, Face to Face Games. They're Canada's largest game store and have all of the singles and sealed product you're looking for, including these new Caverns of Ixalan Precons. Use my promo code MECHANIC for 5% off of today's order. And be sure to check out the updated deck list, linked in the description, at my sponsor Moxfield. Moxfield is the best deck building platform in the world and helps track changes to decks through their easy-to-use history feature. While you're there, be sure to follow my profile to never miss a new brew. Don't miss any of these other videos on the channel either. If you were inspired to build today, you have to hit that subscribe button. And as always, folks, good luck and have fun.